The Alarmist Case for Global Warming is Falling Apart by James Delingpole from Breitbart website. Climate alarmists have finally admitted that they've got it wrong on global warming. This is the inescapable conclusion of a landmark paper, Emission Budgets and Pathways Consistent with Limiting Warming to 1.5 C, published in Nature Geoscience, which finally admits that the computer models have overstated the impact of carbon dioxide on climate and that the planet is warming more slowly than predicted. The paper concedes that it is now almost impossible that the doomsday predictions that were made in the last IPCC assessment report of 1.5 degrees C warming above pre-industrial levels by 2022 will come true. In order for that to happen, temperatures would have to rise by a massive 0.5 degrees centigrade in 5 years. Since global mean temperatures rarely rise by even as much as a quarter of a degree C in a decade, that would mean the planet would have to do 20 years worth of extreme warming in the space of the next 5 years. This, the scientists admit, is next to impossible, which means their carbon budget, the amount of CO2 they say is needed to increase global warming by a certain degree, is wrong. This in turn means that the computer models they've been using to scare the world with tales of man-made climate doom are wrong too. One researcher from the alarmist side of the argument, not the skeptical one, has described the paper's conclusion as breathtaking in its implications. He's right. The scientists who've written this paper aren't climate skeptics. They're long-standing warmists, implacable foes of climate skeptics, and they're also actually the people responsible for producing the IPCC's carbon budget. In other words, this represents the most massive climb down from the alarmist camp. But you certainly wouldn't guess from this the way the scientists are trying to spin their report. According to the London Times, Michael Grubb, professor of international energy and climate change at the University College London, and one of the study's authors, admitted that his previous prediction had been wrong. He stated during the climate summit in Paris in December of 2015, "All the evidence from the past 15 years leads me to conclude that actually delivering 1.5 degrees centigrade is simply incompatible with democracy." Speaking to The Times, he said, "When the facts change, I change my mind," as Keynes said. It's still likely to be very difficult to achieve these kinds of changes quickly enough, but we are in a better place than I thought. And Miles Allen, professor of geosystem science at University of Oxford, and another author of the paper said, "We haven't seen that rapid acceleration in warming after 2000 that we see in the models. We haven't seen that in the observations." He said that the group of about a dozen computer models produced by government research institutes and universities around the world has been assembled a decade ago. So it's not that surprising that it's starting to divert a little bit from observations. He said that too many of the models used were on the hot side, meaning they forecast too much warming. Note the disingenuousness here. Michael Grubb is claiming that the facts have changed, which they haven't. Climate skeptics have been saying for years that the IPCC climate models have been running too hot. Indeed, the Global Warming Policy Foundation produced a paper called A Sensitive Matter: How the IPCC Buried Evidence Showing Good News About Global Warming, stating this 3 years ago. Naturally, it was ignored by alarmists who have always sought to marginalize the GWPF as a denialist institution which they claim erroneously is in the pay of sinister fossil fuel interests. Allen's "so hot it's not that surprising" is indeed true if you're on the skeptical side of the argument, but not if, like Allen, you're one of those scientists who've spent the last 20 years scorning, mocking, and vilifying all those skeptics who for years have been arguing the very point which Allen himself is now admitting is correct. That's why Benny Pazer of the Global Warming Policy Foundation, the GWPF, says this is a landmark moment in the history of great climate change scare. It's the first official confirmation we've had that CO2 is not as big a driver of climate change as the computer models have claimed, and it's the first official admission that the planet is not warming dangerously. But this is not, unfortunately, a cause for wild celebrations in the street. Man Bear Pig has been scotched, but by no means has been slain, nor are the alarmists yet ready to admit the full scale of their errors. This is little more than a damage limitation exercise by scamsters who know they've been caught cheating and now have been forced to concede at least some territory to their opponents for fear of looking ridiculous. Paul Homewood has their number. 1. We've known for several years that climate models have been running far too hot. 2, I suspect part of the motivation is to keep Paris on track. This new study is designed to restore the belief that the original climate targets can be achieved via Paris and beyond. And 3, although they talk of the difference between 0.9 degrees centigrade and 1.3 degrees centigrade, the significance is much greater. 4, given that they now admit that they got it so wrong, why should we be expected to have any faith at all in the models? 5, finally, we must remember that temperatures since 2000 have been artificially raised by the recent record, El Nino, in the ongoing warm phase of the AMO. Yep, but at least we climate skeptics have been proved right again, and that's the main thing. Oh, and by the way, snooty alarmist scumbags, the word that you were looking for to describe the current state of global warming science is sorry. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for coming to the Plain Mundane Show. Enjoy your day. I'm out.